Welcome to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I am your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. Hi, welcome to another episode of the No More Dead Friends podcast. I'm your host, James Evans, and I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Myah H. How's it going?
Hi.
Super excited to have you here. You're somebody who, for a period of time, was a huge part of my recovery. We did a lot of service work together, a lot of stuff starting that committee, and you've definitely been missed in the community out here since you've left. But it's a part of life. You're on to bigger and better things. How's things been going since you've moved out there to Tennessee?
So I do have to say it was quite interesting in the beginning. Um, Programs really different out here.
Oh yeah.
Really different.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that too. When I packed up my bags and moved to Colorado after kind of not getting it out here, one of the big things, and it's ironic now with a lot of the YPAW stuff and hearing people chirping YPAW and being a part of that when it's going on. I sat in my first meeting and people were like yelling pertinent and random things in the reading and what's the point? And I was just fuming in my chair.
Mhm.
It's like people don't know how to do this out here in Colorado. So, I'm very familiar with that feeling. But have you been able to like find like a solid group out there and find some people that you've been able to connect with?
Yeah, so once I kind of like got over myself and like was an acceptance that like what everyone's doing out here is different, but it's working. Like there's sobriety out here. That's the
For sure.
important part, right? Once I was able to get over that, I could hear the solution in the rooms and I got super plugged in and I'm on district now. I'm going to be the DCM next year, which is like crazy. And then I started a women's meeting and I kind of put a little bit of California, a little bit of Tennessee into it, you know?
I love
So
that.
that's been awesome. And I have like a huge group of women that I'm taking through the steps, and that has been interesting.
I love that.
More responses I've ever had in my life.
That's so cool. Yeah, I had told myself now for the last 2 years that it was going to be my last go round with the young peep stuff in that district. I was ready to retire and be old and go to district. And for the second year in a row, I came off of the young peeps high from the convention, and I'm ready to grab another position
All
and
right, serve
work
another year.
work for another bid. So.
Yep.
I'm here until we get the convention. That's
Okay.
that's where I find myself at. But so this is cool. It's a good opportunity for me to really kind of hear your story. We did a lot. I've heard you share in meetings, and we've done a lot of stuff together. But I've never really, have never really heard your story. So if you don't mind, kind of just starting a little bit from the beginning, like what did things look like for you, growing up? And when did things kind of start to pick up, and when did you start to pick up, that led into, towards your recovery?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different than everybody else. I grew up in an alcoholic home and my mom wasn't like abusive or like I don't know, the home situation was still like healthy, but it just she was a functioning alcoholic. So I can never like really mark it, but I knew something was up and it affected me in a way that growing up like I wasn't interested in any part of that. Like I didn't want to drink, I didn't want to do
Mhm.
drugs. And I grew up in Las Vegas, so a lot of my friends were drinking and doing drugs at a very young age, and a lot of them were getting in trouble, going to juvie all the time. And I still had like that like spark of alcoholism in me, but it would manifest in different ways, right? Like I would like rob my mom's car or steal out of her purse or like get in fights, and but I still wasn't interested in drinking, and I hated seeing people drunk. Like it just I felt like they looked so stupid, so it just, I was like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And then one day my mom was like, oh, I got a job in Washington. And we had to move to this really tiny, tiny, tiny town called Tri-Cities. And I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And when we got there, I was a freshman and I was new kid in school. And for 2 weeks, nobody said anything to me for 2 whole weeks. And I'm like used to being like popular and I'm used to having this group of friends around me. And so it made me bring out that measuring stick and go, oh my gosh, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not cool enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not funny enough. And so, one day somebody asked me to go to a party and I was like, yes, yes, please.
Yes,
And I
I want to be
went,
involved in something.
please, I need friends. And so I go to the party and sure enough, someone's like, hey, you want to drink a Mike's Hard Lemonade? And I was like, part of me was like, no. And then the other side of me was like, if I don't say yes, then they might not invite me back to the party. So I said yes and took the drink and I was funny enough, pretty enough, the whole
Checked all the
shebang. And
boxes.
yep. And it just kind of manifested worse after that. But that was my
Yeah.
first.
It's funny you bring up the Mike's Hard Lemonade because I was, thinking back of like my first drink because I always consider my first time getting like super, super drunk as like my first drink. But before that, I remember being younger and when we'd be on vacation in Minnesota, me and my cousin, we would steal my mom's Mike's Hard Lemonade and the two of us would split one of those, and then we'd even like wrap we would take leaves from and we're like 9, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
we would take leaves and roll up leaves like they were cigarettes and smoke leaves.
Hmm.
It was because we're in the woods in Minnesota, and so it was just what we would do. So it's funny that you bring up the Mike's Hard Lemonade, but so there had to have been a pretty big culture shock going from Vegas to Tri-Cities, and that's east. That's like east in Washington, right? On the
I
east
don't know
side.
my directions, but it's like it's like 3 hours from Oregon and 3 hours from Seattle. So it's
Got
like
it.
it's desert side of Washington. People don't think that's a thing, but it is. There's a
For
desert.
sure. Yeah. So that's overall on that side. So yeah, I've done the drive through Mount Rainier and
Okay.
coming out from the beautiful mountains and tall trees and all that stuff, and then you come out the other side and it says "Welcome to the Palm Springs of Washington,"
Yep.
and then that's what it is. It is large and flat and desolate.
Boring.
Yeah.
Place to get in a lot of
So
trouble.
yeah, well, exactly, and so how long were you there before moving out here to California?
Jeez. Gosh, well, I mean, I had been to California 2 times. Like the first time was my first time in program, and I only lasted like a week shy of 6 months. But
Okay.
then the second time, I got sober and I wanted to live in California, so I moved. I'd say I was 25, so I guess from sophomore year to the age of 25.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so you came out here for treatment?
yeah. I got shipped off to Los Angeles and went to rehab in LA, and then just decided to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what did it really start looking like for you before like the first time you went to treatment? So like I'm a firm believer for many of us like it's fun, then it's fun with problems, and then it's just problems. So what did that kind of the progression look like for you going from just kind of drinking at a party in high school, early in
Hmm.
high school to kind of where it was at the early 20s point where it's looking like you got to go to treatment?
Yeah, it got really dark, dude. I went, so it was like party girl central, you know what I mean? But what I kept noticing is like I would black out and do all these horrible things, and people called me like Demon Maya. Like I was a different person completely. It was two different personalities, just like it talks about, you know?
Yeah.
And I was also really addicted to men because ultimately I'm just filling a God-shaped hole, right, with whatever I can fit in there. And I had like boyfriends who would introduce me to other stuff like, Molly and ecstasy, and that wasn't enough for me. And then ultimately like I just got in this spiral where I was like doing coke all the time so I could drink more, and then I couldn't feel the coke anymore, so then I started like IV injecting it. And then I remember like my boyfriend was a heroin addict, and if he wanted to do heroin, I got to do cocaine, but we didn't like each other when we were on that, but we both wanted it, so we'd like manipulate each other that night to do it. And
Yeah.
one night I couldn't sleep and everyone else was sleeping, so I was like, I guess just try heroin. I mean, it's not a big deal. I've done everything else at this point now. And I spent like the whole 24 hours in the backyard barfing, but I loved it. Like, and it
Yeah.
was just off to the races after that. And I just didn't care anymore about anything. And my mom found out and she like shipped me overseas to Australia. And then they over in Australia, I got hooked on meth because that's like the good stuff that they have out there.
Yeah.
And then I'd get shipped back. I just got shipped like to different family members in different states. And it just went back and forth. And it was just a really dark place. And I was like, I did not look like this. Like I was completely covered in scabs from head to toe. Like I was that person that, when you're walking down the sidewalk and you don't want to walk next to them, so you cross the street. That was
Yep.
me. That was me.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. I think it's funny you mentioned just like puking and loving it. I mean, we're the only type of people, right, where we can do something that our bodies have that kind of reaction to it, and we're just like, I love it. Give me some more. Like,
Yeah.
where's
Yep.
the where do I line up for the next one? And
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter what it is that does it to us. We're so all about that.
Hmm.
And then so what do you think was different, the last time you came down here for treatment?
Hmm. Well, right before, so I think like, so my mom, she always kind of enabled me. So like, 'cause she didn't understand like how to deal with it. I mean, what mom just magically does, you know what I mean? Unless you work a different program.
For sure.
So I remember she had finally just had enough, and my stepdad finally stepped in and he took charge, and he's like, dude, I'm done lying to your mom for you, because she was always like working away, so we'd always have to like tell her these stories so that she wouldn't be panicking in another country.
Yeah.
And so he just was done doing that, and they finally like cut me off completely. And my mom, like, I remember the last time I saw her, like, she wasn't looking at me, she was looking like through me. Like she couldn't even look into my eyes because she just was devastated, with what, like, I'm her daughter and she couldn't believe what I had done to my life, because I was not raised to live the life that I was living. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not at all. And so they cut me off completely. I didn't have a phone, and I'm like sitting in the back of a McDonald's parking lot, connecting to the Wi-Fi, trying to contact people from California that I knew could get me into rehab. And I think it was just like I had nobody. Like not even like drug dealers would tell me like, don't come back here looking like that, or else I won't be able to sell to you, because that's how bad I
Yeah.
looked. I'd blow up their spot. And then my friends didn't want to be around me because I was so annoying. And I was like, I would like imagine things that were happening that weren't really happening. So I just had nobody finally. And I was like, okay, I guess it's time, I guess it's
For
time.
sure.
And so when I came back out to California, I knew like I had to not be concerned about who I was going to date, who was going to be my friend. I just had to do those freaking steps. And I did. And I didn't let anything get in the way of that. And I stayed single for my whole entire first year. And I remember when I got my first year, I was like, this is because I stayed single.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I did that too, my first go around, right? Where it's like we try and fix all the outside stuff, thinking that that's what's gonna fix us on the inside, right? Got the
Hmm.
girlfriend, got my job back, started getting paychecks, started looking better and feeling better and doing the deal, and or
Hmm.
at least thinking I was doing the deal, right? And but doing all those stuff on the outside to make me feel better on the inside instead of really taking a look and doing the steps and uncovering like what's really there. I'll never forget. So freaking Tracy, the lady at my rehab, she had this like it was like an emotion wheel, right? And it was like you picked a random emotion on the outside of the wheel, and then you like followed it all the way through. There's like different prompts as you go to the inside, and then it's supposed to be like one of your core issues. And like I was like, this fucking thing is not gonna work. And I literally remember sitting there and it leading to something that like I just wasn't ready to face yet. And I'm just like staring at
Yep.
the paper. I was like,
Mhm.
this shit don't work, Tracy. Like, and then of course, lo and behold, like I leave treatment a week later and I was scared. I was still uncomfortable. I wasn't ready.
Mhm.
I at least liked the idea program that we were
Right.
doing, to where like because they took us to meetings and stuff, right? So I at least
Right.
like was buying in a little bit.
Right.
But I didn't like I wasn't sold on it yet. I
Yeah.
wasn't, but I knew like I'm here, and this is probably like where I should be. So I stuck with it enough. But once I really started to see the real work there, once I got there and they're like, hey, you're gonna have to do this work, I so was
Mhm.
not ready for it.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what really it entails. You have to be ready. And because the time before that I got shipped off to California, I went to Orange County. Same situation. Great rehab, great program. I was trying to work the steps. I had the same sponsor I have today, which is crazy. But and I was like a week shy of 6 months sober. I was taking people to meetings, but I had a boyfriend and I had, I was more interested in that and then in my program. And my first boyfriend in my entire life had overdosed and died. And so all my friends from Vegas call me up and they're like, "Hey, come to the funeral, like we all need to be together." And so my sponsor was like, "Make sure you bring a sober companion." She's like, "I'll go with you." And I'm like, "No, I'll have my friend from rehab go with me." So my friend from rehab goes with me, and after the memorial, guess who's drunk? My
yeah,
friend. And she's like, take a drink. And I was like, no, no. And I ended up taking a drink and then ended up calling the dope dealer. And then I'm in a freaking 7-Eleven bathroom doing things you shouldn't be doing.
yeah,
And they all stopped when we got back to California. I didn't. I couldn't.
yeah.
And I ended up spending like 24 hours in the mirror picking my face. Woke up. I could not open my eyes. I have goop all like my
Oh,
skin is, yeah, yucky yellow. So I drive myself to the hospital. I walk into the hospital doors and the nurses come running for me. They put me in a room. You had to put a full hazmat suit on to come into the room because I was that infectious. And I had MRSA and I stayed there for 3 days to make sure it didn't go to my bloodstream. So I
yeah,
call my sponsor and I go, "Oh my gosh, I got bit by a spider. I stayed the night at this guy's sober living that was really gross." And she's like, "Oh, cool. Like, send me a picture. I want to see." And I was like, "Oh gosh, she's going to know this wasn't from a spider." Send her a picture. And she's like, "Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to get sober?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Okay, come to this meeting. This meeting has 300 people plus, dude." So I rock up to the meeting. I got scabs all over my face. People are like, "Did you get run over by a car? Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I relapsed." And, I have to tell you, I think this really goes into why I'm sober today is because I had that taste of it and I tried to go to meetings, but the whole time I couldn't hear anything. I could not hear anything that you guys were saying. All I was concerned about was how I was after the meeting, I'm going to go get my fix. And experience that within program is so scary. But I knew
yeah.
that then I wasn't ready. You know what I mean?
For sure, and that's the thing too. And in working in the industry, and parents are always like, "Oh, well, what's the chance of my kid getting sober or this and that?" And it's like I really try and like, I don't believe like in the statistics. I mean, we all get shown the statistics or told about this. It's like the extremely low percentage, and I think that that's watered down with so many people that wouldn't even want to participate if
If they hear
if
that.
they weren't forced there, whether
Mhm.
it's, court or this or that, so, and I don't really know where they're even getting those numbers from anyways, but
Mhm.
it really just comes down to like where that person's at. Like if that person even just has an ounce of willingness, like
Mhm.
there's a solid chance they'll get there. And if someone goes in and they're truly ready, like when I just had this conversation today talking to a parent, right? And it's like, the parent of the kid is all focused on like needing their own room, and I'm like, dude, when I was ready to get sober, you could have put me
Yep.
in a room with 12 beds, and there are six bunk beds, like when you're ready, you're ready, and
Mhm.
nothing's gonna stop you.
Yep.
And it's even tough too, where like, I went through I was in treatment for 93 days. And the whole time I was like, I got a couch in Colorado I'm going to sleep on. Like, I don't need an aftercare plan, which is like terrifying now that I'm on this side of things. Right.
Right.
but like I did the geographic and I did what I was supposed to do and I went to my meetings, and even though I got annoyed that people were, you know, not doing the meetings right, I pushed through. I found the meetings I liked. I found the dude that looked relatively like me that became my sponsor, and I did the deal, you know.
Yep.
That's, you know, it happens, right? It doesn't need to look perfect.
Hmm.
We do have the continuum of care, and that is, you know, you're going to have the best chance at getting this and staying sober if you go through all the steps the right way,
Yep.
through going through treatment. But like, dude, I've seen dudes crawl out of riverbeds,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and just go to meetings and get it, right? So you don't have to do like,
Exactly.
you know, you don't need to do everything perfect or have, you know, you just have to like remove those expectations and just be like, hey, I'm willing to do anything, and shy of
Absolutely.
somebody telling you to do some weird off the wall stuff that has nothing to do with the program, you know, as long as you do
Yep.
it, like you have a chance.
Yep.
Um,
The willingness.
exactly. And so what did like that first year, I know you had mentioned you stayed single for it. So like what did that first year really look like? So you know, I know you said, was it LA the last time you were in treatment?
Yes.
How long till you like moved down to Murrieta, Temecula?
Yeah.
Where were you at kind of when that happened? And did you like do sober living, or what did like your routine look like?
Right. So I went to like a 30-day rehab, and then they put you in the sober living house. And so then I was in a woman's sober living house, and I met like all these friends, and it was awesome, and I did like outpatient IOP, and then I moved into a sober living apartment, which basically is just a buttload of money. And you're with like other sober people. And I met like a good group of like sober people. And then I moved out with like someone who was my best friend at the time into our own apartment of from there. And it was interesting because my mom, she had to co-sign the lease for us. And I remember we were on speakerphone with her, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, but it's a year lease. So like you guys gotta stay sober. And we're like, yeah, for sure. The next month my roommate relapsed, and so I had to live with my roommate for like 9 months or 11 months while he's using cocaine, he's smoking weed, he's got his boyfriend staying over and not paying rent, and at the same time I'm working this very draining job. I was like working as a nanny, but for two kids who like are super on the spectrum, and they're like pissing on me and throwing poop at me and kicking me while I'm driving. So my life looks like this. Like I wake up, I go to work, I go to a meeting, I come home. And I don't know if it was my perception. It probably was like I think I just wasn't in the right place for it, but I couldn't connect with like the LA meetings or the people there. And I think when I say my perception, I think like I assumed that everyone was already clicked up and didn't want any more friends, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like nervous to like put myself out there and stuff. And so but there was one women's meeting that I went to every Sunday, and I'd go, I don't know anybody, I need friends, and no one would talk to me. So there was that one meeting, but you know, that's very unlikely. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I have a couple of friends that were like, "Hey, we just got a house in Murrieta, and we'd love if you'd come stay with us. We'll only charge you $400." I'm like, "Yeah, yes." And so, I was like deciding if I wanted to go to Orange County because my sponsor was there, or if I wanted to move to Temecula and give it a chance, right? So I choose Temecula, and I'm only going to stay there for 2 months. But I went to a women's meeting when I first got there, and it was at the Serenity Club and Serenity Circle, and the old one, of course. And I put my hand up, and I said, I don't know anybody. I need friends. And they surrounded me. They added me to a group chat. They're inviting me over to their house, and I was plugged in right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I knew I need to stay here.
For sure. Yeah, really, you know, Colorado Springs, despite the semantics of how they do meetings, it's really the only place where I've seen like the level of community that we have out here in Temecula. And don't get me wrong, like there's spots I mean, San Diego has a great
Yeah.
recovery community, and Orange County has a great recovery community. It really all over Southern California, there's a lot of like really dense recovery. But in my experience in Temecula, when you're like, hey, I need some people, or I need to get plugged in, just the fact on how people swarm that, you know, is
Mhm.
just, it's cool. We're super lucky that we have that.
Yeah, it really saved like my recovery, I think.
For
I think it
sure.
really did.
For sure. And then so like what year was that when you moved out here?
So yeah, so let's see. Okay, so I took 2 years once I finally, when I started going to young people, I took my 2 year chip there.
Okay,
So
and then was that
I
right
just,
after you moved here?
yep.
So what was
Yeah,
that like?
because I moved there and stop it. I'm sorry. I was friends with all like the older ladies, and then they introduced me to Crystal. And I was like, I'm scared. I don't want to talk to young people. And then Crystal was like, it's okay, dude. And she made me be the freaking chair of
Yeah.
the meeting. And then, and then I took my 2 year chip.
Yeah. So was that like right around 2019?
Yeah. So my sobriety. Yeah. Yeah. Cause
Yeah, yeah,
mine's
yeah. Because that's
2017.
right around like when we met too, you
Yes.
know.
It
So
was all back to back.
it literally was like boom, 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 boom. Especially like doing the putting together the bid and then doing the need statement and reading yours from the year before and then mine. I was like, wow, that the timing of that really was like because what did you go to like Summit or something? And
My actual first young people's event ever was a scavenger hunt put on by a Okie Pot.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that when you came back to Temecula and were wanting to put together the committee? Yeah,
Oh yeah. I
yeah,
was in love.
that was August of 2019 when we went out to Vegas for the big Swacky Paw out in Vegas,
Yep.
and then me and Kristen had came back and we were like hyped up. We talked to a couple of the Vegas people, and they're like, trying to tell us to put together something, and then we remembered the Wasted Youth Group, and we went to that on that Sunday night, and then brought it up, and you were like, dude, we're trying to do the same thing too, and then there was like Anthony and Stefan and
Mhm.
everybody who was there was just all on board, and it's crazy to see how like that idea in the parking lot of Del Rio, right, has gone to all the things that with COVID and with trying to find places to meet in the beginning before we could like actually be at a meeting hall and like even just looking at like our t-shirts and like me designing the
Mhm.
initial t-shirt and trying to even get the file right and stuff like all these like
Yeah.
hurdles of these things that we were doing where it was like we were definitely like we were capable enough to pull it off, but it's like something now seeing it today, it's like, dude, something is always there's that higher power, that's something that's there, that's
Mhm.
at the forefront of what's connecting the dots for all of us. That was working with when this thing started in the 30s all the way to today, and
Yeah.
it's so cool to see, and it's cool to see where you're at today. I mean, moving out there to Tennessee, driving all the way across the country, that's such a huge leap, and that's only the type of thing that we get to do. And then,
Mhm.
you got married out there, and it's
Mhm.
just like it's wild. The blessings of the program just keep coming true.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's like everything's just been divine direction, And I
For
just follow
sure.
where I feel God's leading me. And I'm blessed. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so does your man have like family out there? What was drawing you guys out to Tennessee?
Well, first off, which I think is so weird, is that when I met him, we realized that our parents were only 3 hours apart. So my mom's in Knoxville, and his entire family, and I mean that, like the entire family lives in Kentucky, which we're in Clarksville, so we're like right in the middle of them. So they're only like an hour and a half away. So I'm just like, what are the odds that I would meet this guy that's from the South that lives? His parents live not that far from my mom. Like, what are the odds of that? You know what I mean?
For
And so,
sure.
yeah, that's why we came out here, because it's like, I don't know, I've been away from my family for like freaking ever. You know what I mean? And it's like grown up days, right? It's like time to start
Mhm.
having a family. We just got married. So we want to be close to our family so they can help us raise our family.
For sure. And that's a huge hurdle too, right? Because mine and Kristen's family, they're not going anywhere, but we want to leave the state, and it's like
Yeah.
when we start popping out some kids, we're gonna need some help. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
but no, that's interesting. It's so cool to see, obviously selfishly we wouldn't want anybody to leave the area, right? But it's why we get sober, to be plugged in with our family. We rebuild those relationships. Like you're no longer the daughter who's tore up and just
Mhm.
like needing to, burning your life down. It's like you get to show up for your family today. I'm no longer the son that's just blowing through my family like a freaking tornado out of hell, and I get to show up. I get to, be there for my parents. I get to do stuff for my dad. I get to do stuff for my mom. And, life's not always peaches and rainbows, and it's not perfect all the time, right? But at least today, like, I get to show up in my family's life and bring something to the table, and not just what can I take, but how can I add value to your lives?
Exactly. Yeah, my mom actually they were coming down here to visit us a lot and then us going there. And the last time that she came here, so they sold their house and like bought an RV. So they're doing that whole thing. And
Hmm.
so she was walking up the steps of her RV and she fell and she broke her tibia and her fibia, so in her shin, so and is unable to walk. So she's like slowly, learning again, and she's actually able to put weight on it finally next month. So it's been a process, but the best thing about that is that I've been able to go and just be there with her and like brush her hair and like wash her body and like, dude, doing that has been such a spiritual experience. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's completely me being able to show up for my mom, which I never was able to do before.
And you wouldn't be able to do it if you were still where you were at, or even if
Absolutely
you
not.
were even if you were doing the deal out here, right, and you weren't out there, you still
Yeah.
there would still be that barrier. So it's like at the end of the day, like that's what's always most important, is
Hmm.
that we get to do these things and get plugged back in with our family and reap the rewards of our hard work and our sobriety.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
No, for sure. Well, so really quick before we start kind of wrapping up, what if you had something to kind of give to somebody who's newer or is struggling, what is something that you think might be like the key that worked for you? Like for me, I always like to express that like the biggest thing in my story is getting to that place of like surrender, right?
Mm.
And so that's a big thing for me because I noticed that was kind of like the key, the missing link in my prior
Mhm.
attempts. What is something for you that like you would give to somebody, whether it's a pinpoint thing that like you say that's super important, or just like an idea or a thought that maybe that they haven't thought of yet or wrapped their head around?
I would say service work. What can you do for somebody else? Because I'll tell you what, whether you're thinking about drinking or drugging, or you're just sad, or you're going through a breakup, like anything that's messing with you mentally, if you even just call somebody else and ask them how they're doing, you get out of self and you can be healed from that. You know what I mean? Maybe not permanently, but even just for those 5 minutes. And sometimes that's all we need,
Hmm.
and that's why young people's was such a big thing for me because I was able to not only get out of my comfortability and like not be nervous and like make friends and you know what I mean, but I was also able to help a lot of people. You know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
God, like we don't do it so that we get something in return, but ultimately you will always get a blessing from blessing someone else.
100%. Yeah, that even for myself, right? I've always had service commitments. So in the
Hmm.
beginning, it started with just like the group level things, and then it grew into GSR stuff, and then the committee stuff and all that. And I remember early on, I used to always, and I don't do it as much as I used to, but I used to always just go to YouTube and put on like speaker tapes, right, of people speaking
Hmm.
at conventions and stuff like that. And this one guy was telling a story about his early service commitment, right, was to be the coffee guy at his Friday night meeting, right? And it was
Hmm.
this huge meeting. There's like 100 people there. He said there's like 8 coffee pots, and he's like gets there early, gets everything set up, and then it's like the whole time he's like working super, super hard to like make sure that there's always coffee and all these people are drinking coffee, and they leave his whole workstation a mess, and he's just like sitting there like at the end, and he's just like, what is wrong with you? And all of a sudden he's like mad, like nobody thanked me for doing a good
Yeah.
job with the coffee, blah blah blah. And he said he was like sitting there pissed off smoking a cigarette, and then he was like, I haven't thought about the fact that I want to drink yet. Like I
Hmm.
might not be happy because I don't feel like I'm getting this like pat on the back for making coffee for everybody, but like I haven't thought about myself the whole time of doing this, right? Like I've done something where I've shown up, I've done all this work, and I've gotten out of myself and out of my own way, and I haven't thought about a drink the entire time.
Right.
And for him,
Right.
that was where it like clicked, right? To where,
Exactly.
and then that's why he decided to keep showing up and keep making coffee, whether people told him good job or not. So, and
Yeah.
that it's so true, right? Like, for myself, I find myself too busy, or like I think that like, oh, well, with work, I got to step back from this. And granted, there is, you know, burnout's a real thing. I'm not
Yes.
saying that like, people can't get burnt out. You do have to have balance. You do have to take care of yourself. But sometimes when like you feel like, okay, there might be too much on my plate, like, you know, sometimes taking that extra look and deciding, right, okay, well, what am I getting out of this service position or this service work? And a lot of times for me, like, doing that extra thing and keeping that service commitment is what actually relieves me of like the pressures of everything else that's going on. Taking that hour and a half on every other Sunday to go to the meeting to make sure that you know uh the committee operates, and sits through an hour, and we sit through an hour and a half business meeting,
Right.
over and over and over and over and over again, and it's really only the people who really love the program that get to do that or are
Yeah.
willing to do that.
Right.
But when you do that, it takes you out of yourself, and it helps spread the message, and
Yeah.
that's what's most important.
It's a better solution than drugs and alcohol, that's for sure.
No, for sure. Well, Myah, I super appreciate your time. I'm very glad I got to learn a couple new things for you, or about you. Definitely super glad that you were able to take the time to make this happen. Thank God I decided to do it on Zoom, right? And I can just
Yeah.
Zoom in with anybody anywhere, and make this happen. So
I'm
thank you so
lucky.
much.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm so proud of you too, dude. And I think what you're doing is going to help a lot of people.
I appreciate you so much. All right, thank you so much, Myah. Thank you for listening to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I'm your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. For information about our clothing line, please go to nomoredeadfriends.etsy.com. The No More Dead Friends podcast is made for educational, promotional, and entertainment purposes. It is essential to understand that the topics discussed in this podcast are based on general knowledge and are not to be considered as professional treatment advice. Please consult with qualified medical professionals before making any decisions or taking any actions based on the information in this podcast.